The night felt suspended in a heavy, velvet silence, the kind that seems to press against the glass, separating the warmth inside from the cold reality of the world. Sophie Hart stood by the window of her fourth-floor apartment in Chicago, watching the snow spiral down in thick, white flakes. It was only 7 in the evening, but the city was already wrapped in the dark blue haze of winter. Sophie usually loved these nights, just her, the scratching of her charcoal pencils on paper, and the hiss of the radiator, but tonight, the solitude felt different. It felt incomplete. She had spent the day sketching for a deadline, and her eyes were tired. She was just about to pour a glass of wine she didn't really want when the silence was broken. A knock. It wasn't aggressive, just a solid, polite rhythmic tap on the wood. Sophie paused. She never had visitors this late, and deliveries usually buzzed from the lobby. For a moment, she considered staying quiet, letting the hallway shadows keep their secrets. But a strange intuition, a pull she couldn't name, drew her across the floorboards. Before we find out who is standing on the other side of that door, I want to take a brief second. If you're enjoying this moment of calm, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me share more stories like this with you. And I'm curious, let me know in the comments, what is the weather like where you are right now? Is it a rainy night perfect for reading, or a sunny day full of noise? When she opened the door, a man stood there, balancing a cardboard box that looked like it had seen better days. He looked just as caught off guard as she was. "I am so sorry to bother you," he said, his voice deep and apologetic. "The delivery guy left this at 4B, but the label says 4A. Sophie knew him instantly. It was Liam, the guy who lived 2 doors down. They had existed in that polite periphery of apartment living, nodding in the stairwell, holding the elevator door, but never speaking. "Oh," Sophie said, blinking in surprise. "Yes, those are my art supplies." She reached out to take the box, but the bottom was slick from the melting snow. As the weight transferred from his hands to hers, the box dipped. They both instinctively grabbed for it to stop it from falling. Their fingers brushed against each other, a sharp, sudden contact that felt warmer than it should have. They righted the box, laughing a little too breathlessly, trying to ignore the spark that had just jumped between them. "Thanks, Liam," Sophie said, hugging the box to her chest. "Sorry you had to play mailman." "It's no problem," he said, stepping back. He glanced toward the hallway window at the end of the corridor. The wind was howling now, rattling the old panes. Sophie hesitated. The easy thing to do was close the door. But seeing him standing there in the drafty hall, shaking the snow off his coat, she couldn't do it. "Listen," she said, the invitation spilling out before she could second-guess it. "It's freezing out there, and the wind is awful. Do you want to come in for a second? I have fresh coffee brewing." Liam looked at her, startled, and then a slow, easy smile spread across his face. "I'd like that. Just until I warm up." That one small decision changed the texture of the entire night. Inside, Sophie's apartment smelled of graphite, vanilla candles, and old wood. She apologized for the scattered sketches on her desk, though the room was actually quite cozy. Liam stood near the entryway, respectful of her space but clearly relaxing into the warmth. "I'll grab a mug," she said. They sat at her small kitchen island, the steam from the dark roast drifting up between them. The snow whipped against the windows, sealing them into a private world. The conversation started with the usual things, the weather, the building's quirks, but quickly deepened. Liam talked about his work as a chef, the chaotic beauty of a dinner service. Sophie spoke about illustrating, the challenge of capturing a feeling in a single image. The dialogue flowed like a river finding its course. Sophie noticed the intensity in Liam's gaze when she spoke about art. Liam noticed how Sophie's voice dropped to a softer register when she was being honest. They weren't trying to memorize these things, but they were doing it anyway. "This is nice," Liam said during a quiet pause. "Usually on nights like this, I just crash on the couch and stare at the ceiling." "Me too." Sophie smiled, feeling a layer of armor fall away. "I guess I didn't realize how loud the quiet was until now." The wind eventually died down, leaving a hush over the city. Liam checked the time and stood up, though his movements were reluctant. "I should probably let you get back to your night," he said, sounding like he hoped she would argue. "Right," Sophie said, a sudden pang of disappointment hitting her chest. "At the door." He stopped. "Maybe," Liam said, resting his hand on the frame. "We could do this intentionally next time, without the misdelivered package." Sophie's heart gave a deliberate, heavy thump. "I'd really like that." When the latch clicked shut, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility. Sophie leaned against the door, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. A simple knock had unlocked something she hadn't known was closed. Weeks turned into a season, and the accidental encounter became a chosen rhythm. Sunday mornings were for testing Liam's new pastry recipes. Friday evenings were for long walks through the snowy park. They didn't put a name to it. The ease of being together was definition enough. One Tuesday, Liam knocked again. The evening was crisp, the city lights reflecting off the snowbanks. "Hey," he said, holding up a small brown paper bag. "I passed that bakery you mentioned. I got you a croissant almond." Sophie beamed, touched by the specific detail. "You remembered." They spent the evening on her sofa, sharing the pastry and listening to old jazz records. They talked about the heavy things now, fears of failure, dreams they were afraid to say out loud, the baggage of past years. Liam listened in a way that made Sophie feel completely understood, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Later, as they stood by the window looking out at the frozen street, Sophie turned to him. The glass was cold, but the space between them was magnetic. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered. "Anything. Did you ever think we'd be standing here, like this?" Liam looked at the reflection of the street lamps in the glass, then turned his eyes to her. "No, I didn't see it coming. But," his voice dropped, rough with emotion, "I'm so grateful we are." "Me too," she breathed. The air in the room thickened, charged with everything they hadn't said yet. He didn't reach for her hand, though he stood close enough that she could feel his warmth. They were living in the anticipation, the beautiful, slow unraveling of a story that was just getting started. "Same time tomorrow?" Liam asked as he stepped into the hall. "Absolutely," Sophie replied. As time marched on, the bond solidified. It led to a specific night, a dinner Sophie cooked. She made a simple roast chicken, lit some taper candles, and set the table. Liam arrived with a bottle of Merlot, looking sharp and a little jittery. The mood was perfect, light and playful. But then, a transformer blew somewhere down the block. A snap, and the apartment plunged into darkness. For a heartbeat, it was pitch black until the soft, flickering light of the candles took over. The shadows stretched long across the walls, making the room feel intimate, like a secret cave. The sudden shift stripped away the last of their pretenses. "I think," Liam said quietly, his face illuminated by the flame. "I've been terrified to admit how much this matters. I didn't want to ruin the rhythm." Sophie's hand moved across the tablecloth, finding his fingers. "I've been scared too. It's rare to feel safe. Truly safe." The honesty hung in the air, golden and shimmering. Liam turned his hand, lacing his fingers through hers. It was a simple anchor, but it held the weight of everything. "Whatever this is," Liam said, his thumb grazing her knuckle, "I'm in. I'm done pretending we're just neighbors, good?" Sophie whispered, her eyes catching the candlelight. "Because I'm done pretending too." Just then, the hum of the refrigerator kicked in and the overhead lights flared back to life. But the harsh return of electricity didn't break the moment. The change had already happened. The room felt brighter, not because of the bulbs, but because of the truth that had been spoken. They didn't let go. They sat there, hands clasped, finishing their wine as the city outside began to wake up again. They realized then that the best stories are the ones you can't predict, the ones that start with a blizzard, a box, a mistake, and end with a new beginning. As Liam eventually left that night, looking back with a promise written on his face, Sophie knew this wasn't just luck anymore. It was a decision they would keep making day after day. The snow had stopped falling, but their story was just taking its first real breath.